Hello everyone, this is Ian Schaefer here with UDA Technologies, and welcome to today's Lunch and Learn featuring my favorite topic, workflows. Joining me today, of course, for the webinar, I have Holly Gipson, another of our senior product specialists.
Hi everyone.
And we've got Sydney Dorsey available to answer any questions as we're working through this webinar today, and to, of course, flag any fun ones for us as we're covering these topics that we have for you guys today. Of course, as you can see on our screen right now, we've kind of got a rough outline for what we're going to do, a workflow for our workflows, if you will, where we're going to be talking about different phase breakdowns, different items with their actions, and how to customize a lot of these workflows. But we're going to kind of expand on this, and the general idea for what we hope to provide for you guys today is a way to design your current process into a visual element so that you and your entire team can follow along with everything that you want done at any given point. So again, look for the questions panel on the GoToWebinar interface. Just let us know what you guys are thinking, and of course if we see any interesting ones, we'll touch on those as we continue. But to give you guys an idea to begin with on why we think workflows are so important. Of course, UDA Technologies, we've been around now for 20 years, and before we actually started releasing software, we worked in the construction industry as well. A little bit of background on that, when UDA Technologies was actually United Design, we were working on a lot of multifamily units. We sold plans, and as we were selling plans and working on these projects, a lot of other builders would come to us with those plans and ask how much it would cost typically for this type of home or multi-unit residence, and how long it would take typically. So these were the big two questions: how much, how long. And Michael would always tell the same thing. Michael's the owner of our company, and he was running the construction company at the time. He would always say the same thing. It'd be about X amount of money, $450,000 for some of these custom homes, like Lot 185 Baldwin Park, about $450,000. And if you follow the schedule, it should take about 4 months, I think is what the schedule shows. 4 or 5 months. And he would always say that. And of course, about a year later, some of these people would come back and say, yeah, your numbers were way off. That house cost us way more money, and the schedule took 8 months instead of 4. So how were you able to do it? And his answer was always the same. It's all about the process. And with this workflow, we're going to be kind of showing you guys how some of these work. Now, of course, for us, again, here we are 25 years later, providing now several different software solutions for you, our teams out there actually getting the work done. And we've seen now with well over $75 billion worth of projects being managed every day that process tools could not be more critical. And within ConstructionSuite, the desktop software, you'll actually see that we provide a lot of information through dashboards and utilities, but the workflows are all found within the projects. Now with either the little hub here to get into the workflow for your specific project, or if you click on, like over on recent projects, you click on a project you want to work on, there's also a shortcut or a link right here to view the project workflow. Now, of course, we've given it its own page because it's one of the most important elements of this process. And I can already see some of you kind of chiming in about having like multiple checklists, and everybody's got their short list, or we've got little forms that we're supposed to fill out. But it becomes a bit of a bear to keep up with all this information and to share it with somebody new. Internally, we are constantly trying new systems and new processes. So, we've worked with Google Docs and Google Sheets and things to put together our own checklists. Holly, I know you've got your own lists that I've seen you writing out on notepads and stuff like that as well. I'm sure Sydney will chime in with her own. We're list people sometimes. We can be, at least. And what this does is it allows us to put that list into the system. Just build it right in where we're going to be using it on a regular basis. And again, you'll find it within the project so that we can track our progress on these jobs. More importantly, though, we've got, in our default set, we've got 4 main phases to our workflow. We've got a planning and proposal phase. We've got a pre-construction phase. The construction phase, which of course you're going to repeat several times as you're going through this, because you've got the construction phases too, and that's an extra piece. And then closing. So you can see that we're thinking beginning to end of this job, right from the very first point of contact when you're talking to your leads and you're creating the opportunity. That's when a lot of our planning and proposal phase in the workflow will start, all the way through closeout, where you've got things, if we scroll down to the bottom of the workflow, you'll have all the steps in here like reviewing profitability and cash flow on this job. Let's make sure that the information that we projected was close to accurate so that we can improve upon this next time. Filling out any of our warranty paperwork to provide our contact information to our client. Again, really valuable piece, because we want the clients to always be thrilled with the work that we've done so that they can, rave about us to all of their friends and bring in new possible clients as well. We've also got that end of project estimate versus actuals review as well. Ideally, you'll be looking at this report no less than once a month over the course of the project. I prefer to look at it every week. Even if it's the same information as last week, it's a great reminder. But we've also got one at the end, because here at the end of the job, we want to review everything that we did on this project to make sure that the next project that's similar is even more streamlined. And that's the point of our closing portion of this workflow. We want to make sure that next time we can do even better. And so this, of course, Holly, I think your term is operational excellence.
That's right.
Yeah, and so this workflow is a way to define that. And so, of course, here we have it. And as you can see on this particular project, we've already kind of started working through the workflow itself. And each of the major headings, this is just a major node here, like planning and proposal, as you're kind of working your way through this. We're in the planning phase. Check the box for this. As we move through, it's all the steps that we need to do, mostly administrative steps, in order to see this project through to completion. Now, of course, go ahead.
Well, exactly. That's one thing you'll see. I see some great questions already starting to come in, and that's a pretty common question is, so what is the difference really between my workflow and my schedule? And as we go through the workflow here together today, you guys will start to see that many of the things included on our workflow are not things we would typically see on your construction schedule. You may have a great scheduling system in place. Hopefully you're using OnPlan for that, or maybe Construction Online Scheduling. May have a great may have a great template already in place for your schedules. And so that's really such a critical part of being able to plan for and manage a project. But it is different than the project workflow that we'll be covering today. So often you'll start to see those tasks like entering client contact information into your system or generating reports at the end of a project that are not things you would normally see on a construction schedule, but that still really are required ingredients for excellence when running a project. And so that's really what we want to empower you with the workflow tool is a tool that allows you and your team to execute at high levels on every project that you do up to the same standards every single time, and make sure that you're not forgetting things. Now, we do have another great question. Ian, as you jump into kind of our first section here on the workflow, we've had a great question to ask, about using workflows if you do different types of work, or how customizable. So, just like many things in ConstructionSuite, we do give you a starting point, but how customizable are these templates, or could a company come in and just maybe build one from scratch?
Yeah, and it's such a great question too, because the answer is they are completely flexible. As you're working through this on any of the workflows that you're generating here, when you've got the workflow in the project, if you need to add a few elements to it, you can always just right-click and add new workflow items within the workflow that you're currently working on. You can also edit the existing workflows, you can delete items, you can move them up and down and indent and outdent. A lot of the times I find that the structure that we set up here is really, really great for doing things like outlining everything that we need in the proposal package, as an example. We've got to generate the proposal, we need to make sure that there's a project totals portion in there as well, and that we print the schedule. We're putting together a story for the team. So we're looking for as much information in here as we can get. And within that proposal package, we want to make sure that our sales team has everything that they need. So again, we're going to customize this a little bit. Maybe for our sales team, if this is a design build project, we might add an additional step in here to print off the plans or the designs and include the designer in the meeting.
Exactly. Or we may even have an entirely different kind of node here where we have a design phase really of the workflow. So you're not limited to only having, the 4 that we've included. You can actually build in your own phases so that, again, depending on the type of work that you're doing, you may have a whole section for design. You may want to sprinkle different things throughout the project.
And again, as you're going through and you're making these adjustments, Holly, as you mentioned, we have a really, we've got a great starting point for all of you. You'll find this in most of our sample projects that we provide in ConstructionSuite, but you'll also find them, if you're looking for the examples, you'll have them in the Tools menu. If you come take a look under ConstructionSuite Options, you'll actually find project types include all of these workflows by default as well. So if you want to come in and take a look at what we recommend for these various different types of jobs, you can come take a look under the project types that we include by default, which are commercial, production building, residential, and I think we might actually have a remodel, or maybe it is single-story dwelling. But we've got 4 or 5 predefined for you. If you'd like to take one of these existing and then make those changes, again, for like design build contracts if you have them, maybe we'll start with the residential project, copy this particular type, and turn it into design build. Now the design build project type will include the workflow that we want to work with. But if we want to add, like you were saying, Holly, a design portion at the beginning, a new phase before the planning phase for design, we could, in this case, enter in some new items, call that design. That's going to be a major heading. And within that design portion, you can add in some of the steps that you typically go through in that design build. Of course, we're going to have some meetings in there. We're going to do some work getting the plans together and do some prints and everything like that. We'll still have a package that includes a design contract. That's going to be one of the steps that you'll want to include. And again, almost all of that can be done just through the right-click menu when you're adding in new items.
No, I think this is worth noting here. So when we look at the workflow for our Hyatt Plaza project, you can make changes to that, but that's not changing all of our workflows. Is that right? So when we look at project type options, I think it's worth noting here that, not only is this where you would come to edit those templates, but that you will have unique ones for each project type. So when you look at, as you're building new projects or just entering new projects into ConstructionSuite, one of the things that is required is that you choose a project type. And this is part of the reason why, because tied to your project type is going to be a specific workflow based on that type of job. And that really gives you the flexibility then, Ian, like you said, to kind of come in and change that or make new project types, tweak some things so that it's really specific to that type of job.
Mm-hmm. And again, this is if you're just starting to build these things out and you're trying to set up all of your templates, your workflow templates that correspond with these project types, is the perfect place to go. If you'd rather take an existing project that you executed well on, there's actually another button, once again in the list, that allows you to copy a workflow from an existing project into this type. So if you do a design build project and you want to pull in that workflow that you guys customized for that, this is perfect. You can come in there and just click the option. It'll pull in that workflow with it. It'll also grab the dimension sets too. So if you guys do use dimensions, which hopefully you will, even though that's a next level feature, if you are using those and you want to work with those as well, you can pull them in addition to everything else that you guys have here too. So as you're looking through this, again, you've got all the information in here, and again, you can customize all of these details, adding in new list elements, moving or adding in new phases, and rearranging what you have. All of that is very, very easy to do. And where it gets really interesting is when you start looking at the triggerable events that you can actually include with these items as well. Now, I know a lot of us, we've got plenty of work on our plate already, and we're talking about different types of projects and things like that. Typically with the different types of projects, we'll have different estimate templates that correspond with them. With different estimate templates, we always want to make sure people are using the right template for the job, and the easiest way to manage that is to actually link the create estimate entry in the workflow to the exact template that I want to use every time on this project. Again, this is easy to do because when you right-click and edit any of your workflow items, you'll find an area here where you can actually assign an action to the workflow event, and that's represented on the workflow by these fun little play buttons. Whenever you want to execute the action, you click the little play button, it performs the task, and the tasks that you have available are pretty widely varied, in fact. So we were talking about this the other day, and and I think in the last webinar, in fact, we did throw out some numbers as well.
That's right.
ConstructionSuite now offers over 275 different templates in some form or fashion. And that number is growing all the time as well. I still kind of stumble over it because I'm still thinking, 205, that's a bunch. But that number is a couple of years old at this point. Now we're 275.
Right. And it's such a great thing. But when you think about it in terms of, if there is a document or template that you need, chances are we have you covered. So let's say that you go and find the exact estimate template that you want to use and really customize that for your company. You've gone in, put in the work to build the template that you want. So now the question is, among all of the templates that we have available, how do we make sure that our team chooses the right one every time? So that variety starts out to be such a great thing, but once you've chosen what you want to use in a particular circumstance, we want to make sure that when we encounter that circumstance on the workflow, that it's going to allow us to really narrow down so that someone's not having to choose which estimate template to use every time or which contract we want to use, but actually taking them to the exact one that you've already decided is going to be best for your company.
What I love about that too is it starts to eliminate some of the in-the-moment judgment calls. We don't need those. And hopefully what we can do by providing these in the form of a workflow is we can minimize the number of decisions that have to be made as we're going through this process by once again just linking into everything that the team needs. So as you're kind of working through these, again, you can just right-click, select the Launch Template option, and for this particular entry, creating an estimate, you can see the little title for the workflow item here. I'm going to link that to a residential master or maybe to a remodeling template or something like that. All you have to do is click OK, and now when you click that action item, it launches the pre-selected template. This is especially useful when you're working with a couple of different contracts or you've got a series of reports and documents that you need to run. Or if you're working with a government entity and they require that you guys fill out 17 different forms, probably in triplicate. You can link all of those together under a heading here so that you can put together your full document package and have it all ready to go. So of course this opens up my primary estimate. You can see that it's actually saving into the job automatically as well. I'm eliminating a couple of extra steps. Even though they're short, sweet steps, I can actually combine those into just one step by using this workflow, pre-selecting that template, having it linked already, and then we just dive right in. This, by the way, is especially handy when you come back to and start looking at the contracts portion as well. When you start looking at contracts, where do we have my contract package? Create contract package. There we go. Let's edit this workflow item. Again, let's launch a template from here. We're going to go into this big, huge list of different contracts that we have available. In our case, I'm going to be building just a fixed cost contract, a fixed amount contract. So that's a standard contract for us, and it's CO1 fixed amount contract. Again, if you're working on cost plus projects, you might do cost plus fixed fee or cost plus percentage, whichever applies. If it's design build, maybe we shift over into the design build section and select one of those instead. Or maybe we'll have several. Maybe we're going to do a design contract in the beginning. We offer one here. Then later, there's going to be a fixed amount contract if they decide to go with us for the construction as well. That's great. We can even build in a custom contract if we choose to that has some section in there that says if you went with our design, then we'll credit the design fee towards the construction cost. Could happen. Ultimately, all of this information you can set up and you'll have access to any of those templates. Select the one you like, and that way when you hit the action item for your contracts, it also preloads the project and the client information in here for you as well. All of that information is once again pre-selected. Those of you using OnPoint will probably recognize the document wizard when I pull it up for you. But again, you don't have to go through this step. You don't have to go picking your people and selecting the right job. With the workflow, it already knows who to use in this set. So it, once again, just streamlines the process, helping us save clicks. Of course, once we do this, we need to remember to save it into the job too. Okay. And then if we want to, we can actually email it out directly from here as well. Takes seconds to generate the contract in this case.
Now, speaking of email, I know that when we look at the workflow action items that can be set up, one of the options that users have is, of course, to choose a template. So that could be the estimate template, the contract schedule templates, things like that. But also we have the option to launch different actions as well. So I know sending an email is one option that could be tied. Can you talk a little bit about what other things users might be able to set up with those handy play buttons?
Oh, absolutely. And in fact, there's a great set. It usually does start with emailing. So typically there'd be another step in here. In fact, you could probably insert an item if you chose to email the customer directly, or maybe even just add it to sign agreement. We need to send them the agreement so that they can sign it. So from here, we're going to take a look at the actions available. We already looked at launching templates. There's a bunch. Now we're looking at fire an event. So with the events that you have available, you've got a lot of events available within ConstructionSuite. And some of those questions, or some of the events that are available within ConstructionSuite include emailing the client. So maybe we could select this for signing the agreement, and then all we have to do is just put together that stock email. In fact, in ConstructionSuite now, you can even memorize signatures, and I use air quotes as if you could see that, but the signature, we use a lot of signatures internally to kind of preload standard emails that we'll send, so you can have your sales email written up as a sales signature, and then just attach the proposal, and off she goes, or the contract, rather. But some of the other actions here as well will include things like launching the primary estimate template, launching the primary estimate, primary schedule, open the estimate wizard if we want to make choices, which, in my opinion, always better to link to the estimate template to use instead of giving the people the option to choose which template. But there's also things in here too, like creating new contacts, new activities, new tasks, or managing the dimensions. Now, primary estimate and schedule, these ones are really, really important. I've worked with, over the past many years with the company, I have worked with thousands of companies to build estimates, and in part of their sales process, we almost all have some form of a negotiation step. Now, if you guys do this, I highly recommend you keep your original estimate in the project every time. When you're negotiating, you want to be able to pull up the original estimate, the negotiated estimate, and then as you guys make any additional changes or add options or whatever it might be, maybe you'll have 3 copies. I've seen some teams that will go through and build 5 or 10 different estimates within a project because they're saving each iteration of that estimate as they're working through it, so that you can always reference back to where we were a month ago, 2 months ago, 8 months ago. I've seen it.
Well, sounds like some great practices, but it also sounds like then you might have to hunt for the primary estimate when you go to your files.
That's true. It does create a little bit of confusion because then you're looking at 8 to 10 estimate icons and it becomes a little bit difficult to figure out which one's the primary. Now, we've done a lot of work to make that easier. We've got a link on the project overview that says launch primary estimate. That's great. We've also got a little check mark on the primary estimate icon so that you can see it easily and everything like that. But in the workflow, we make it even simpler still, because if you needed to do something like generate a proposal, the proposal typically comes from your estimate, so we can just launch the primary estimate from there, and then it takes you into the right one. You don't have to go find it. You don't have to go look for icons or check marks or little dots or anything like that. You just click play, gives you your primary estimate, you hit proposal wizard. Again, super fast, super efficient. No room for mistakes in this case. No accidentally clicking the wrong one, because it's always going to be pulling the primary, which is the one we want to use. With the schedule, we have similar things. The primary schedule is the only one that updates the calendar. The primary schedule is the one that's going to be used for cash flow reports. So it's the primary schedule that you want to make sure that you open up every time. Now, hopefully, a lot of you are using Construction Online in addition to ConstructionSuite. And what we've done to kind of improve upon your file management practices, we actually give you the ability to download copies of your schedule at various different points in time, so that you can always reference back to where we were and what we're using now. With that option to launch the primary schedule, it's always going to take you to the right version for any of those additional reports. So if you need to reference it, you can do it. It's always going to give you the right one. No confusion in that case too. So again, these action items for internal work, they're all going to provide you significant time-saving functions to allow you to just continue to move through that process quickly.
Well, one thing we see with clients who are using workflows really effectively is that the workflow becomes a bit of a central hub. Just like when you select your project and you have your project overview that's displaying a lot of information for you so you can quickly see who's on the job, what's coming up, some quick numbers coming in from the estimator schedule. The workflow becomes the central hub of activity so that you can then really run everything off of this workflow, which means that having those links in place means that you and your team kind of train yourself to come to this section always in ConstructionSuite, look at what needs to come next, click the button to launch, and you're on your way. So even simple things like, maybe at the end of the project we want to make sure to schedule some sort of meeting with our client, well, then you would launch perhaps that new activity so you could get it on the calendar easily, or could be launching just a to-do list item. So again, eliminating steps, speeding that up, and really creating that central hub where you're coming to this workflow every time to see what needs to happen, and you're able to launch those really easily. Now, a lot of great things that we can do internally here with ConstructionSuite. Let's talk a little bit about these external actions, or touch on those, because I know there are a couple of things that you can do even if you need to access information outside of ConstructionSuite. Maybe we do need to launch Construction Online. You have the option to enter a URL so that you could go to a specific website. So that could be, really anything from Construction Online to maybe there's a place where you have to go to submit information to get permits on a pretty regular basis. We see that a lot. Again, just putting that link in so that you're always going to the right place, or, if someone else is coming in behind you, you don't have to tell them where to go. It's just automatically going to, take them to the right place there.
And so with those, going to specific websites, in fact, from here, you can even see down below a couple of entries in the workflow that would benefit from linking to a specific website. Confirm a secure financing. Maybe we want to link directly to the website where we fill out all the paperwork for this. For example, past couple of years at the International Builders Show, when we were in Orlando, we were right next to Wells Fargo, and they were discussing all of their construction financing options. So this might be the perfect place to go ahead and link to the website where you would apply for financing on any of those jobs, if that's what you do. Or obtaining bonds. You got a website where you've got to upload the files and the documentation for the project. Link the website there so that you don't have to type it in or bookmark it all the time. Again, this saves all that information for you and your team. So if somebody can't remember what the website is, no problem. All they have to do is go to the workflow and click the link.
Which is great because they don't have to ask every single time they want to go to the website. It's always just going to be there. So this is, to me, such a great example of ConstructionSuite. Not only streamlining, but doing some of that work for you. It's remembering things that you won't have to remember because you're able to save this really as part of your process. Now, you also have the option to launch an external application. So you can launch a program outside of ConstructionSuite. I think a common example of this might be that you're launching something like QuickBooks when we want to kind of look at accounting information or want to, initiate some of that integration. Maybe we need to launch QuickBooks or some of the CAD programs that you guys are using to do digital takeoffs, or some of that design work. So you can actually even link in opening up those other programs, again, straight from your workflow here.
Yeah, and that, by the way, those could be some of, again, our preferred partners like Chief Architect, PlanSwift, eTakeoff, SoftPlan, whoever it may be. You'll have access to all of those as well, and all you have to do is just click the action item to launch an application, browse for the shortcut. Most of that's just going to be on your desktop, and now when you click the action item on that particular workflow entry, it's going to launch PlanSwift for you. Again, what we're doing here with this sort of action is we're once again centralizing a lot of your functions, even if you are choosing to use different programs and different applications and things like that. QuickBooks is a great example. PlanSwift is another good example. Some of you might be working with, again, some government entity, and they require that you use a specific pricing system or quoting system or something like that. We've installed several on some of our AWS servers. So a lot of those, again, they link directly so that you can always remember that step and then just click play to be able to launch the program that takes you to that step. And so part of this, by the way, part of the reason why I'm so fond of these is my role here at UDA Technologies has been varied. we like to say that we wear a lot of hats, as I'm sure a lot of you guys do too. We do a lot of work, but a large portion of what I've done over the past several years has involved training in some way, shape, or form. Now, what I love about the workflow is it allows us to go through and show you what we intend your next steps to be without having to write up something unique for every company, because, of course, we've seen what works. And we've seen what works by working with hundreds of thousands of companies over the past several years. We see a lot of common elements, and the biggest, most valuable part to that experience for us is we put it in writing, and then we share it with all of you. So if you have questions, all of this information is going to become available. And again, as we're working through this, while the individual tasks themselves are not assigned to a specific team member, you do have all of the information outlined. You can set it up so that everybody knows what their contributions will be on a typical basis, but this enables people to kind of cross-train a little bit more easily or regularly, because now you can see everything that's required for a slightly different role so that you can go into that workflow and pick up somebody else's slack. Like if they happen to be on vacation, or we've got a couple of our employees here at the company who are out today for various different reasons, but their work isn't falling behind. We're able to step in and help them keep up with all of the processes and projects that they're supposed to be working on because it's outlined just like this. And when we have somebody else step in to help, they can see exactly what's been accomplished, exactly what our next steps are, and can just kind of pop in and fill out everything as we go.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And it's one of the great things about ConstructionSuite being such a flexible system and the workflow tool being, just so easy to work with. I see teams use this all sorts of different ways. In general, what you'll see is that if an item needs to be assigned to a specific person, usually it needs to be an actual to-do list item or an actual calendar event or something that is assignable and a little bit more trackable. Workflow items tend to be a little bit higher level administrative, but I have seen teams that really come to this workflow and they will put their initials beside something as they check it off so that you can kind of go back and look to see who completed different items. I've seen teams come in and do the same thing when they're sort of claiming something that they plan to work on. So the idea isn't that this is something where everything would be assigned in that way, but really kind of a living workflow that you and your team are working on collaboratively. And like you said, you're able to see what's next, and you're not as dependent on one individual person, but rather really able to come in and see what that next step should be, regardless of who's looking at it.
Yeah. And this, by the way, helps to minimize silos of work as well. And what I mean by that is we find that for tasks like the workflow items that we have outlined here, the most important thing about this is that it gets finished for the project so that we can continue moving forward. That's the most important thing. The second most important thing might be who gets it done. But if we're so stuck on who's getting it done that we forget that it has to get done for the project to progress, then we're holding ourselves back. We've created these silos of responsibility that don't actually have to be there. Now, still, along the same note, I like to know what my job is, what my tasks are, and everything like that. I've seen a lot of teams, when they're coming together and kind of building these, doing first setup on their workflows, everybody will come in and sit down at the table. We might even take the workflow and print it out so that when we're having that meeting, everybody can have a copy. You've got a print option here, so you can actually print out the entire workflow. As you're printing, I believe it's going to ask if you want to use all items, this one, do you want to include completed items? Do you want to show the checkboxes? You've got a lot of different options here on how you print the information out. But again, there's still times where we like to be a little bit more old school and have that paper copy. What I like about that, though, is in that meeting, everybody can contribute their responsibilities and make sure that it's all well documented. There's going to be individual tasks that they're going to be working on that everybody doesn't necessarily need to know how to do, like maybe how they verify resource information is less important than the fact that it was verified. But that needs to be a step in here because, again, we do not, under any circumstances, want to risk having people out there climbing around on the roof if they don't have their own insurance. That might, as has happened for some of you in the past, that might cost up to $50,000, and that's a really quick and easy way to go upside down on a project. So, again, what we want to do is we want to put into the workflow all the steps that need to be done for the project to be a success. And then, as Holly mentioned, and as I'm sure some of you do, we can then add in some additional to-dos or tasks that are assigned to individuals that supplement this really well.
Yeah, exactly. And it's so easy to do. I love the idea of printing it out because then, that helps to show you where you might want to customize it a little bit. We load such great workflows into ConstructionSuite. And one thing that we see, I know, Ian, you've told me many times that this is something that you use almost in every ConstructionSuite training section that you do. I know you've been able to go out and be on site with a number of our customers as they're getting started, and this is always something we take a look at. I think one of the things that I really love about ConstructionSuite workflows is how relevant they are to so many different businesses at different stages or different sort of scenarios there, because you may have a small team of a couple of people. With your workflow, you're looking at things that are going to keep you on track, keep you from forgetting things, kind of help the two of you work together more efficiently. Ian, you and I could put together a great workflow that we might work off of collaboratively, and we're keeping our projects on track. When you're looking at a growing company, though, it's worth taking the time to kind of go through, look at the workflow, make sure that look for those areas where you might add in a couple of additional things there, because this is really your recipe for success and how you can communicate what your expectations are for the way a successful project would be run. Every person that comes on board your team or is hired can look at this, know exactly what the expectations are. It not only speeds that process up, but it really sets that person up for so much more success than not having a roadmap for how you want it to be done.
And that's always been a big question too. Whenever I do these training sessions, a lot of the times when I touch on workflow, the question comes up by anybody on staff at the company that I'm working with. The question is, who should be using the workflow? And my answer is everybody. If we're talking about specific types of companies, of course, if you're doing residential or commercial construction, it doesn't matter. Applies to both. You guys can go through and set up workflows for both. If it's just a one-man show, if you're working all by yourself, this is a fantastic way for you to go ahead and outline projects so that when you're multitasking, and it's going to happen, you don't miss anything critical. And you can follow along with a couple of projects at the same time. Even if there's a couple that are in the sales pipeline and you're working on one and you've got three in your backlog, you get the idea. It helps you guys keep everything together. Again, brand new companies should be tracking everything that they did on this project so that they can go back through and review to make some improvements for the next job. Companies that are pretty well established, that have been around for a few years, they do well to have this because then they can use that as a way to prove their organizational skills to any potential clients. I find that it's a great sales tool if you're doing something like that. Again, as Holly mentioned, growing companies really helps because if you're onboarding somebody new, you can just sit them down to look in front of the workflow and just say, here it is. Here's your step-by-step. This is everything that's got to be done. You yourself don't have to do all of it. I want you responsible for just this pre-construction part. But this is where you look. This is what's going to tell you everything that you got to do. If you need any help, here's some great videos that UDA made. Which, by the way, we record all of these things so that people can come back through and take a look too.
Yeah.
But even for the companies that are well aged, we'll say, like fine wines or great cheeses of the construction company world, even those, you might start thinking about handing off your company or like to maybe it's a family-run company, so you're going to let your son or daughter take over perhaps, or maybe you're planning on selling the company. These tools, things like workflows where you've got an outlined process, these increase the value of a construction company to be sold by, in some cases, 300 or 400%. So a construction company that doesn't have processes in place might sell for a fraction of your annual income. If you do have these kind of practices in place, and you can easily hand off the full process, that makes construction companies significantly more valuable. And it's this one feature that they'd be looking for in order to do that. So if you think that you're going to sell it one day, start doing this today. Start putting together your workflows so that you'll have all of this organized and well established by the time that day comes.
Yeah, so many great use cases there for the workflow with different types of teams there. Now, I can see that we've had some really great questions come through. So we've tried to touch on those as we've stepped through workflows today, but we'll take just a moment and review those and make sure we've gotten to your questions. This would be a great time if you do have additional questions for us to go ahead and chat those over.
Mm-hmm. And again, that does kind of highlight something important here. We have at this point actually come to the end of our predefined workflow for the webinar, so we now are in the Q&A portion. If you guys do have additional questions or anything else that comes up, please definitely let us know. Either now, or if you guys have follow-up questions later, you can always catch this video on our webinars page. We'll have the recording available for you guys shortly. Or you can always reach out to us by phone at 1-800-700-8321, or by email at info@uda1.com or support@uda1.com. Since we're talking about ConstructionSuite, you can find all that information available to you in the help menu under contact information. You can find it right there. So if you are interested in reaching back out to us, let us know. Otherwise, again, we're fielding the additional questions now, and hopefully we can get some more great ones because you guys look like you've been doing a great job. Don't forget, guys, we definitely review all of these questions and everything like that afterwards as well. And so we're looking for ways that you are using tools like this or this tool itself to improve on your businesses. So if you guys have anything that you can share, I would really appreciate that, just so that we can make sure that we are always the leader in all of these technologies. We want to be the best because we want to provide the right tools for you and for your success. And the only way that we can do that is if we know what you need. Looks like we actually have an interesting question here too. How can we update an existing project to use a new workflow? So this is actually an easy process. Most of the time when you're going through adjusting a workflow template like you might in your project types, the easy way to adjust which workflow applies, of course, first of all, come here, make sure that
Make
you
the
set
adjustments.
yeah,
right?
make the adjustments. Again, most of it can be done through the right-click menu as you're as you're inserting in new tasks or creating like a whole new phase for design work. Once you set that new structure, all you have to do then is go back to your project overview. So just go to all projects, click into the project, and view your project details and assign or reassign the project type that has the workflow that you'd like to use. Now I say reassign because if you're changing that type, it'll still ask you if you want to reset the workflow to use the new project type workflow. So if you are making a lot of customizations, this is a great way to go back through and retroactively apply that workflow. I have seen an unfortunate number of companies who will create new project types from scratch, but not actually build any of the workflow information. So then when they decide to go in later and add it, it's a great time to go back through and just reapply those workflows to the jobs.
Now, notice if you do decide to adjust the workflow to an existing project, not only will it ask you, do we want to do that? So you don't have to apply the new workflow when you're assigning the new project type. In this scenario, though, of course, that's exactly what we'd be trying to accomplish. Notice that it's not going to save the checkboxes. It's assuming it's a new workflow with new items. So that's one thing to just note about how that works, but it's actually super easy. And that's one of the great things too about the workflow tool itself, just being it's so flexible and so easy to use. One of the things about it is that it's, on the one hand, very simple. You're just going through and checking these boxes. So it's, there's nothing complicated about using the workflow, but so powerful in terms of what it can do. So, if you need to go back and check a few boxes, that's only going to take a few minutes. That's certainly easy to get accomplished there.
Yeah, interestingly enough as well, it looks like in this case, Holly has selected a a workflow or a project type that includes a workflow that I was in the middle of making adjustments to, which is why we probably see a little bit of duplication here. At any point, if you need to, you can always, again, just go through and kind of rearrange everything that we have available so that it makes a little bit more sense. And in this case, like I've got pre-sales, I've got a planning and proposal, then pre-sales, then planning and proposal. So if I want to get rid of the first one, again, just right-click, delete the workflow item, and it'll get rid of that and all of the subsequent parts to this as well. And do you want to delete all sub-items? Yeah. So again, we've got some really easy to kind of clean up tools in here as well. I'm actually glad that you selected one because it gives us a chance to highlight this. And as you're going through it, again, you can see that this one is different. I've got some extra steps in here. We've got some extra work kind of coming together as part of this process. And again, those custom workflows are really, really valuable because, again, different companies have different requirements. Maybe you're a green builder and you want to make sure that you've got all of those steps together so that you can remain certified at whatever level it may be. Maybe you're a spec home builder, so one of the options that you need to set up here is the model homes that we're going to be building, or maybe it's semi-custom, so we've got some option packages that we need to put together. This might be a great place to go in and put in the template. Again, the possibilities here are limitless. So as you're kind of working through this, just remember, if you ever need to add a step, add it. If you ever need to kind of clean up a couple of parts, do so. And if you want to link anything, again, those action items are always going to be available. Just right-click, edit the workflow item, and you can make any adjustments that you need or connect any dots that aren't currently connected as you're working through it. Great pair of questions there. I really like this workflow, by the way. Still got a little bit of cleanup to do down below, but it's one of those. My expectation is this, just like any other process, you're going to revisit it regularly. You're going to make some small changes to it. You're going to refine it. And again, always work toward perfection. It's never done, basically. And as you guys are going through and reviewing it, there's always going to be a step down near the bottom in closing where you review the project, see what pitfalls came up over the course of the project, see if there's things that you could do to eliminate those pitfalls, and make sure that they don't come up in the future. In fact, maybe we can add in an additional workflow item, and maybe it's just going to be end of project review, and maybe that's how we finish. In fact, that one would probably have a checklist associated with it, so maybe we could put in a checklist on that one. Again, we'll talk about it in our next meeting.
We will. Well, the possibilities are endless. So, when you look at workflows, remember that it is such a flexible tool. It's going to be custom for each company and dependent a little bit on, you and your company's, not only your process, but your size, how long you've been in business, how far into that process you are. So there's a use case, for every possible scenario, but probably how you use it and how you organize your workflow will vary a little bit different, based on the type of work that you guys are doing and where you are in the business, which is what's so great about how easy it is to customize and tweak and add things. Very often what we learn in those end of project meetings can drive like, okay, well, let's add a new workflow item to make sure that maybe something that was missed this time around doesn't get missed next time. So it's great to be able to keep those master workflows updated so that you're constantly refining that process towards that operational excellence that I love to talk about so much.
Mm-hmm. I would also recommend, if there is ever a question about whether or not it should be a workflow item, keep in mind that these should all be effectively kind of like SMART goals. Everything that you enter in here should be something that can be checked off. You don't want to have ongoing tasks here in the workflow, because an ongoing task is exactly that. It's ongoing. It's never done. And because it's never done, you never check it off. Like daily cleanup, for example, on the construction, that's something that would typically go into the schedule, not the workflow, but it's a prime example of something that I probably wouldn't put in the workflow. Mm-hmm. That's just part of your work every day. Every day you're going to clean up after yourself. So I don't expect to have that here, since, again, I'm going to drill that into my team so that it's, at that point, it's muscle memory. They do it every day without thinking about it. All right. Well, at this point, it does look like we finished up most of the questions that you guys have. So we'll go ahead and wrap the webinar. Don't forget to keep an eye on that webinars page so that we've got it always updating. So you'll be able to find this recording and a list of the new webinars that we've got coming up for the month of August shortly. So take a look there if you guys want to see what we've got coming up. I know we've got some great topics right now, and of course we are always interested in your feedback too. So if you guys have anything that you're really, really interested in us presenting, please let us know. Shoot us an email, give us a call, submit it here in the webinar under the questions panel.
Chat it over right now. We always love to hear from you guys. We want to make sure that we're providing outstanding resources to help you get the most out of your investment in ConstructionSuite and Construction Online. So go ahead and chat that over to us right now if you'd like. If there are topics that you'd love to see, we do have some great things planned coming up for August and September. We'll be having a webinar session to focus on our cloud hosting services. So I know many of you guys using ConstructionSuite want to know, how can I take it with me everywhere I go? How can I have more access outside of the office? Our cloud hosting solutions are a great way to accomplish that. So we'll have a session coming up soon that will give you some more information about how to get that set up. We also have some outstanding new features that have been launched in our Construction Online platform over the summer. So we're setting up some webinars to introduce you guys to those new features, show you a little bit about how they work. So a lot of great sessions coming up. Make sure that you keep a check on that. For today, though, as always, we do thank you guys for spending your lunch hour with us, and hope you have a great rest of your day out there.
Yeah, thanks everyone, and take care.